Hello everyone, it's Cassie. Welcome back for another Trinity Stamps video. Today we're going to be making an A7 card and we're going to be using some of these fun products. We'll talk about them. This is our tiny teacup die. I love it. There's even a tiny tea bag in there. We also have our tiny donut dipper, so donuts, and we're also going to make like donut holes. And then I'm going to bring in the tiny speech bubbles because I just couldn't resist once I started pulling out all the little tiny things. We have our Insider Sentiment Valentine's stamp set. This has some amazing sentiments in there that go beyond Valentine's Day. And then we also have our die that matches up with it. And I think that's fabulous for just any sentiments, really. And then we also have our Simply Sentimental Hugs and Simply Sentimental Kisses. We're going to use both of those as well. Not the dies, but there are matching dies to go along with it. So let's jump right into it. I have pulled out some Distress ink colors. We're kind of going pastel-y here. Our first one is some saltwater taffy, and I've brought in my blending buddy. We've got one for each of those colors, and I am going to use those on these little 2" by 2" squares. Now, if you have a die and you want to cut those out that way, be my guest. I did go ahead and die cut, or just regular cut these. I'm not always successful with that. I know you'd think it's a straight line, but I'm not always successful. So I will say that the dies for me are kind of crucial, and I'm looking at some of these and I think they look okay, but like I said, straight lines aren't always the thing for me. So I definitely need those dies. Okay, so now I am bringing in some squeezed lemonade, and we're doing the same thing. And you'll notice it's more of an ombre look. I noticed also that the oils from my skin were transferring over when I was doing the one with saltwater taffy. So I did bring in some mint tape, and I'm just sticking that to my finger so that way the oils won't transfer over to the little panel that I'm blending on. Our next color is some Twisted Citron. I love how these colors just look together. They're just great. And then again, we'll put a little bit on top just to have a nice ombre blend, dark on the bottom. It kind of grounds them a little bit, and you'll see what I'm talking about once we actually start putting everything together. And you'll also notice I'm cleaning up my mess in between because with all that blending, you don't want to add colors to your blending that don't belong there. So I'm definitely making sure to clean that mess up. And this last color that we have brought in is some Broken China. You'll notice I have a few other colors sitting off to the side there, and I am going to use those on our donuts. So you've noticed I've die cut each of those out just on some white cardstock, and I've put them all back into place. I'm going to just use some scissors and cut those apart to make the blending process a little bit easier. But I think this is definitely a fun way to do your die cuts. You could very obviously just use some colored cardstock if you wanted to, or you could color these with your alcohol markers. That's always a fun way. I love doing that also, but today I decided to do blending. That first color to give us a white cake donut and some donut holes was some tea dye, and this next one is the brand new Scorched Timber. And I gotta tell you, it's a great brown. To me, especially on these donuts, it gives us the perfect chocolate donut. And you'll see what I'm talking about once we get done, because those colors will soak into the paper a little bit better, and then they kind of even out, if that makes any sense. So I'm really happy with those. And now I'm going to speed this up about 8 times because I'm going to use the colors on the various frostings and all the things. So we've used all those colors, just going back and forth, even on some of the drizzle. I'm telling you, I just had fun picking colors and just doing this. It was such a great time. And I was listening to a book on tape and just blending away. Super fun. All right, so now we're done with all the blending, and now we can start piecing everything together, which is always fun to see everything come together. But before we do that, this piece of frosting here, I am going to use this die cut that you see here on top of it. It lines up perfectly. And what it's going to do is cut sprinkles out of it. Now you could use those sprinkles on another card if you wanted to. I am just going to take what is left, so you'll see all those sprinkles are cut out of it, and I'm going to put it right on top of a piece of white that I've die cut out. So it'll look like we have white sprinkles on our donut. I'll use some liquid glue to adhere this down to the front of the white piece. And I'm just putting little dots of that. You don't have to put it everywhere. Just little dots just to make sure that it stays in place. And it's pretty easy to line up. Once you got it lined up, just stick it on down. Look at how cute that looks. Imagine the possibilities. And then I'm going to take my little white cake donut and we will adhere the frosting down to the front of that one. I just love how these look. I showed this to my stepdad and he was like, oh, it looks like a cookie. And I was like, you know what? He's right. It looks like it could be either a cookie, and definitely this one looks like you could make one of those little Keebler fudge cookies. Either looks like a flat cookie or definitely the donut. That one in particular with the sprinkles definitely looks like a donut. This one looks like it could have been a drizzled cookie for sure. And so I did decide to cut out the drizzles from the center. Not all of them, just the two that are sticking out for sure, because I wanted it to look like they didn't go over the hole. And then I'll glue this down to our chocolate donut. But yeah, this one looks like it could definitely be a cookie once you put that drizzle on it. So start making those Keebler, those little Keebler cookies. All right, and then the rest of them, just making the little donut holes. So the smaller donut holes come from the frosting. No, those ones come from the actual donut themselves. That's the center of the donut. And then the bigger donut holes come from the frosting that you cut out. And you have the small frosting and you also have the bigger frosting that you can put down on those. And so I'm just lining those up. And then I also have 3 little drizzles that I've die cut out, and we're going to stick those on top of 3 of our cake donut ones, or our bigger cake donuts. Like I said, just had fun putting these together. And then I'm going to build up my little donut scenes here in a minute after I start putting together my coffee cups. What I did here is I used that scorched timber on a couple of the little accessories that come in the tiny teacup. I actually did it on all of them. I did it on the stripes. I did it on, there's this really pretty scalloped edge. I did it on that one as well. And then I also did it for the coffee. I decided not to use the scalloped edge because once I put those brown stripes on there, this really reminded me of those, I can't remember the name, if it's like Cornell or Corel. I can't remember the name of those, but I'm pretty sure my grandparents had a set. And they look like this, I think. I could be wrong. Anyway, so I did 2 of the coffee cups like that. And I left one of them just plain white. And then I did die cut out the Insider Sentiment Valentine die. And now it comes as 2 pieces, but I didn't separate those 2 pieces. I kept those 2 pieces together and die cut it just the way that it was. And it gave me this little slit. And then it gave me the inside of the sentiment bubble. And then it also gave me this outside piece where it has the little part where it's the speaking section. But you could absolutely separate those pieces instead of getting all 3 pieces. And you could still do the same thing by putting them together if you really wanted to. Now I have a piece of craft cardstock that I have cut down to 4 3/4 by 6 3/4 because we're going to do a 5 by 7 card. So an A7 card. And the sentiment that I've chosen is this absolutely adorable one. I love you, but I love you more, or a whole lot more, after my first cup of coffee. As soon as I saw that one, I knew I had to make a card using it. Funny story about that. My kids know that at least when we were homeschooling and they were home and they lived at home, to not bug mom before 8:30. It's true. So now I'm going to build up my little scenes, each of my little scenes, and I'm not going to attach them down to the squares just yet. I'm just using liquid glue to make all the pieces. I'll add little donut holes on some of the coffee cups or over the donuts and get those all ready to add to the squares. And then we'll attach down, first and foremost, we're going to attach down the sentiment because I wanted that to be sort of in the center. I'm using my glass mat as sort of a guide, but I'm also eyeballing this a lot. And so I've got my liquid glue and we're adhering the outside piece of that speech bubble. Again, that's 2 pieces that you could separate. I just haven't decided to do that yet. And you separate them and then you just have 2 pieces once you die cut it out. Or if you add them back together, then you get your 3. Then I'll add that outside or that middle piece, and then I'll add the very center piece that has our sentiment in it. I just really like the way that looked, just the way that was, so that's why I did it. Now we're going to glue down all of our squares. Again, I'm mostly eyeballing this, sort of using my glass mat as well, but you know, when you make cards as long as I have, oftentimes eyeballing is the way I do it. Probably laziness. I'm just going to be real with you. It's probably a lot of laziness because I don't always get it right. That's for sure. But that laziness takes over. And then, you know, sometimes we have crooked pieces, but it is what it is. I have taken some of the adhesive strips that Trinity Stamps carries. I've peeled off the release paper on those. You can manipulate those however you need to. And then I'm just going to go ahead and stick those down all over the squares, just picking and choosing which ones I want to put where. And we have our little scenes, but they're all popped up on those adhesive foam strips. And I just love how these have turned out. Oh my goodness. And I've added those little speech bubbles to it. We're going to set that off to the side to dry, and then we're going to do the inside of our card. And the inside of our card is just a panel that measures 10 inches by 7 inches and scored at 5 inches to make it a 5 by 7. And I'm gluing down our plain white coffee cup and the 2 little donut holes that I have left over. And then I do decide I want another sentiment on the inside. But those sentiments are going to be a combination from our Simply Sentimental Hugs and our Simply Sentimental Kisses. And I've just combined those together. And then we've got Hugs and Kisses from Me to You. Now I did stamp it on the inside. I decided I don't like that. So we used our speech bubble again and did the same thing as we did on the outside. And I'm going to go ahead and glue these down over the top of that. This is why I don't really mind taking the risk and sometimes stamping right on top of the paper, because most of the time you can just cover that. Now I wish I could have lifted this speech bubble a little bit higher, but I'm okay with it. I really am. I think it looks good once all is said and done. So we'll stick the pieces together, and then I do need to stamp our sentiment. I didn't move it off of the stamp block, and we'll just stamp that down on the center, and then we can just put this right on the inside, and it adds that cohesion from the outside to the inside as well. How cute. Hugs and Kisses from Me to You. And then we'll glue down our panel to the front of our card base. Love it. And then I chose to grab out some of the new embellishments that Trinity Stamps carries. Those are our iridescent pale pink bubbles, our iridescent sour apple bubbles, and our iridescent raspberry bubbles. And then we also have our crystal canary rhinestones. And I just went to town putting these all over the front of the card. Had the best time doing it, honestly. And I mixed and matched them around. It was so fun to grab colors that matched the inks that I chose. And if you're like me, I definitely struggle with where to place embellishments, but I've kind of let go of that a little bit, just having fun putting them down. And if it looks good to me, I'm happy enough with it. And sometimes if it still bothers you, put them down, don't glue them down, walk away, walk a little distance away and take a look, and then you'll have a better idea. But there is my card. I am so happy with how this turned out, and I hope you love it as much as I do. If you do, hit that like button. Definitely consider subscribing if you haven't already done so. And be sure to check out all that Trinity Stamps has going on over on their blog, Facebook page, and Instagram for more crafty inspiration. Thanks for stopping by, and we'll see you soon.